Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. I think that was the best walk-up music we could possibly have for a morning today. I want to thank the Nuggets Drumline. Let's give them another round of applause for being here early this morning. I told several of you we had a surprise this morning. You wanted to make sure you were on time or early to make sure you didn't miss the surprise. So glad that you all could make it. And feel free to start enjoying your breakfast as we continue the program. Good morning. I'm Debbie Brown, president of the Colorado Business Roundtable, and welcome to View from the Top, the Business of Sports. Colorado Business Roundtable leverages the knowledge and experience of more than 60 CEOs and senior executives from Colorado's largest employers that make up academia, business, community, and government. We analyze our state's challenges with a long-term global view, and we make recommendations to strengthen Colorado's economy and quality of life. Our partners represent a broad range of business interests, political perspectives, and personal philosophies, but they are united by the desire to maintain a high quality of life for all Coloradans by ensuring that the state's economy remains strong and globally competitive. We're mission aligned that business is a force for good. The National Business Roundtable, of which we're affiliated, showcases major employers in every state. BRT CEOs lead companies that support 37 million American jobs, generate $10 trillion in sales activity, and account for 24% of the US GDP. Before we jump into the topic for today, I want to thank a few folks that have made today possible. First, our gold sponsors, iHeartMedia and PCL Construction, for sponsoring today. I want to thank you both very much. Brenda is here, and I think Jeff Darnell with PCL. I want to thank Jay with Jay's Valet for sponsoring our VIP reception last night. Thank you, Jay. And I want to especially thank Chris and Liz Wright with Liberty Energy for also sponsoring our reception last night. Thanks so much, Chris and Liz. George Sparks, where are you? Where are you? George Sparks is the CEO of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, where we're hosting our breakfast this morning. I want to thank George and all his team for making us feel very welcome today. Thanks so much, George. And I know we have a handful of elected leaders in the room. When we think about policy issues, we certainly want to have partners with the folks who make the laws and help provide the rulemaking and make sure we have a way of making sure the business voice is also heard. So I want to give a special shout out to Mayor Millay of Lone Tree, Mayor Jan Coleman of Thornton, Mayor Stephanie Pico, City of Centennial, Senator James Coleman, and City Councilman Rick Holt. If you'd please stand, we'll give you a round of applause. And last, I want to thank our Colorado Business Roundtable Board of Directors and partners for being here. They help fund our work that we do year-round to make sure that business has a seat at the table on issues that are so important, including infrastructure, tax and regulatory framework, and workforce. So thank you all for being here today. Appreciate you. We host a View from the Top panel each year. This might be your first time coming, but this isn't our first time with this topic. Last year, we hosted global CEOs who talked about supply chain challenges, geopolitical uncertainty, and trade. The year before, in the same room, we hosted nonprofit CEOs who talked about the intersection of profits and purpose. But this year, I'm especially excited to talk about the business of sports. For those who know me, you know this is a little bit of a midlife crisis for me. And I'll tell you more about that. But very, very excited to we're honored to showcase Colorado sports teams, executives representing the Broncos, the Nuggets, the Rockies, and the Avalanche as they share their insights, experiences, and strategies for business in this competitive world of sports. There's no doubt that Colorado is a sports town, right? And I can see all the morning people here who are excited about the topic. It's woven into the very fabric of our identity, from the fervor at Empower Field at Mile High to the resounding cheers in Ball Arena. We're all excited about sports seasons. It's a unifying force that binds our community. But I must admit, and those who know me well know this, I used to find team sports especially boring. And I think I admitted that to Damani the other day, that I wasn't that into it. What happened was my son played sports in high school, and it was the first time I was really exposed to sports. And I didn't even realize there were plays in football before that time, which is kind of shocking. I know. But I was a single mom when he was playing in high school, and I realized what it meant for him in terms of gaining discipline, respect, teamwork, the authority figures that were around him, his coaches, the community that came together for a common goal. So the power of sports was very, very real to me at that time, and now I'm hooked. It went way beyond winning or losing, a winning streak or a losing streak or a winning streak. It was really the power of community, and maybe you all can relate to that as well. So now, whether I'm enjoying a Coors Light and a hot dog at Coors Field with the Rockies, banging on the glass at the Avs game, or marching with thousands to show support for the national championship Nuggets, or most recently, my memory of bringing my 82-year-old mom to her very first Bronco game last season in a Dalton Reisner jersey. The real secret, though, is she had a crush on Travis Kelce. But I'm going to break it to her that probably she's not in the running for Travis Kelce anymore. So sports is entertainment, it's pride, it's community, it's memories. It's part of what makes Colorado, Colorado. But it's even more, and this brings us to some of the topics we're going to hear about today. You might be surprised to know that according to Common Sense Institute, the sports, recreation, and tourism industries generate $60 billion to the state's GDP annually and support 600,000 jobs. This was calculated before Coach Prime joined CU. That's added another $90 million so far to CU's budget. That doesn't even include their earned media that they're getting. The business of sports helps the entire ecosystem of Colorado businesses that provide goods and services to individuals traveling into town or also participating in these sectors. And while we think of Colorado sports teams in terms of game day, today we're going to take a sneak peek at the business of sports, how they operate like other companies in the room today, how they operate like some of your companies dealing with infrastructure, workforce, tax and regulatory framework, and how their jobs might be different when you think about sports betting, stadium management, all the other challenges that come their way in their day-to-day business. We do know this, it's a tough business on the field and in the boardroom, and we're honored that they would share their perspectives with us today. Before we bring up the panel, I've got two sponsors that I want to introduce that have also made today possible. And we're excited to hear briefly from them before we get rolling. First is Scott Harry. Scott is the External Affairs Lead at Crown Castle, the nation's largest provider of shared communications infrastructure, cell towers, small cells, fiber, which connects businesses to the data technology and wireless services we all rely on. Scott tells me it's the biggest company you've never heard of, so please welcome Scott Harry.
Oh, thanks, Debbie. That was great. I'm really looking forward to today. That drum line was so cool. I was talking, and I didn't know whether to stop talking because the drum line was so loud. There was this nervous moment. Then we all stopped and just looked. It was great, really fun. So, good morning. We at Crown Castle are really proud to sponsor this amazing event. We've been a part of this event for a few years, but this is the first time we've really stepped in and contributed a great sponsorship. So, working at Cobert these last 5 years has not only connected us with other business leaders, I have found an amazing group of thought leaders who are influencing Colorado's future, like Senator James Coleman here, who's passionate about enacting policy that reduces recidivism in our jails. I've also connected with Danny Moore a few times, and he's super committed to bettering the lives of fellow vets at his company, DeNovo Solutions. Sue Glass, who I just talked with yesterday, has a huge vision for the YMCA, and she's hoping that they can have a greater and greater influence in our communities. When you mix and mingle with people like this, well, you begin to imagine how your own company can be a greater force for good, as Debbie says. So, how does my company fit into our sports theme today? When you think of communications infrastructure, sports may not be the first thing that comes to mind. In fact, you may not even know what I mean by communications infrastructure. Well, lucky for you, we at Crown Castle serve customers such as AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile by providing fiber, cell sites, and small cells that help them connect millions of people with ever more efficient broadband experiences. Most recently, on February 12th, Super Bowl Sunday, nearly 68,000 fans converged on State Farm Stadium to witness not only a historic game, but they didn't know this, they were having a broadband moment. They were connected with the outside world by the most advanced 5G stadium wireless network ever built. The system is a technological marvel, and our team was responsible for building that. Now, I'm gonna nerd out here for just a second. The multifaceted system included 3,000 radios on the main stadium area, 475 5G radios in concession areas and the pedestrian ramps, 281 outdoor small cell radios surrounding the stadium, and 20 miles of new fiber built just into the stadium. So it was no small undertaking, and our team did an excellent job. So during the game, our system handled more than 70 terabytes of data usage. Now, that doesn't sound like, hey, what does that mean? How do we compare that? That's a 60% increase from last year's Super Bowl. So 60% more data usage. And our team helped build the system that handled all of that data. So, and the most significant spike in data occurred during the kickoff and also at Rihanna's halftime. So you can, imagine everybody holding their phones up, filming. That's riding on our system. So thank you for joining us, and I can't wait to hear more from the stars here that are joining us. So excited to hear what they have to say. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Scott. Brian Fitzpatrick is the Vice President and General Manager of Mortenson's Denver office. Brian is responsible for overall strategy development and direction of all facets of the business inclusive of Mortenson's impact on the economy, or on the community, excuse me. Why he's particularly excited about this event is his deep experience and love of working on sports facilities with different sports organizations at the professional and collegiate level over the course of his career. In addition to Brian's responsibilities with Mortenson's, he also serves on our board of directors for Colorado Business Roundtable. And please, I think most of you are eating, please continue to eat. We're just gonna be real efficient with today. But excited to have you meet Brian Fitzpatrick. Thank you, Brian.
Well, good morning. I don't know. I don't need any coffee after the drum line. I agree with Scott. Like, I could use that every morning, get me going. I could run through walls with that. Well, great to be here with all of you. Certainly a great occasion, great reason to be here. As Debbie said, I'm Brian Fitzpatrick. I lead our Denver business for Mortenson. Been with the company for 17 years and my second year as a board member. So selfishly today is just an amazing collision of kind of my life. Hometown sports fan, grew up in Denver, former college athlete, go Ore Diggers. Any Ore Diggers? Yeah. 2, all right, cool. Built sports facilities all across the country, and it's something that I've really loved. And really, Colorado sports is the reason I got into the profession I did. And I'm with the company I am and have been for 17 years. So when Debbie approached me about getting involved in this, no need to convince, because this is about as good as it gets for me. As I thought about this event, I obviously reflected on Colorado sports, but also some of my experience outside of Colorado with sports and living and working in other parts of the country and world. And I grew up in Denver, left in 2007, and at that time, we were doing pretty good. Couple Super Bowls, couple Stanley Cups. We were in good shape. While I was gone, we won another Super Bowl, and got back about 2 years ago and won, a Stanley Cup, an NBA World Championship. Like, the trophy case was getting pretty full in Colorado, right? And I'm not saying at all if you're thinking like I'm responsible for all of that or I had anything to do with that. Definitely not. I'm just stating facts. But my point is, we're pretty damn lucky in Colorado to have such great sports organizations that set such a high bar. And I've lived in places like Phoenix, Arizona, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. And, the standard there is just disappointment as a sports fan. And I'd say we're quite the opposite. We've got a high bar because we kind of lift each other up. So this is a tough business. Sports is a tough business, but super rewarding. And while we may have some rough patches and some rough seasons, I've got nothing but the most faith in the folks you're going to hear from today that's going to keep that successful tradition alive. I'm going to keep the Mortenson infomercial short and sweet, but a little bit about us. We are a family-owned top design and builder developer in the country. We've got about 6,000 team members across the country. But at our core, we are some of the best sports builders and community builders in the country. We've been in Denver since 1981 and built some of the most iconic projects here in Colorado. Coors Field, Ball Arena, CSU Canvas Stadium, CU Champion Center, and really most recently, the new and improved video board at Empower Field. And thank you to the Broncos and Damani's team for that opportunity. If you ask any of our team members about sports and if they've been on a sports project, they'll probably say something to the effect of, it's probably the most fast-paced, challenging, demanding, unique, difficult work you can do in our profession. But there's nothing more rewarding, and every time they can't wait to do another one. And I think there's just something to sports that keeps people coming back, and I think some of the folks in the industry can probably relate to that. We feel so fortunate to be able to do such great things in not only Colorado, but across the country. But in this community, the relationships we have are super important. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to serve on the board of Cobort. The mission is to leverage business for a force of good. And we believe that, and we believe in that. And so we believe business is a tremendous asset to our communities. Cobort has given us additional opportunities to focus on some of the priorities we have in education and workforce, and given us those opportunities in spades. So on behalf of our fellow board members, please take a look at Cobort, what it's all about. It may be a good fit for your organization. And then we have plenty of board members here today, so please grab them if you want to know more. And Debbie and her staff are fantastic and would love to share more about the organization. Well, it's my honor to introduce Susie Wargin. I read her resume, and I think I was tired just reading her resume, so I need to step my game up. But Susie, a fourth-generation native of Colorado, Susie is well known for her sports media career spanning TV, radio, and podcasts. She has covered the Vancouver Olympics, the 2007 World Series, Super Bowl 48, and more. Currently, Susie is the Denver Broncos radio sideline reporter, midday DJ at 103.5 The Fox, host of Cut, Traded, Fired, Retired podcast, and on top of all that, she's a Hall of Fame RE/MAX realtor. So, Susie, welcome.
All right, I get tired reading it too, so thank you for having me here today. This is really a neat event. I'm very excited to be able to talk a little bit more to a couple of guys. Greg, I've known Greg for a very, very long time. We go back to that 2007 World Series season, and Damani I've gotten to know well. And then Matt, he and I have had a couple of interactions over the time. So I think you're going to really enjoy what we have for you here today. I get to go to a lot of these cool stadiums, and some of those, it makes such a huge difference where these teams play. I go to a lot of stadiums where the sports isn't that great. And as Brian said, we have a very high bar here in Denver, and our people that work for these organizations, I see them all the time. I have for years and years. And they do want to win. They do want to do everything they can for the fans. And boy, if you haven't seen that new scoreboard at Empower Field at Mile High, it is something else. And if you go to a game, it's going to blow your mind, and it makes a huge difference. The fan engagement is so different. So we're going to have a lot of fun talking about a lot of that this morning. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and start bringing up some of our three panelists that we have today. I'll start with Damani Leach, who is the president of the Denver Broncos Football Club. Damani is an esteemed sports executive with 25 years of sports leadership experience. He was named the president of the Broncos in 2022. He directs business operations, fan engagement, and innovation. He oversees all aspects of the fan experience, revenue, partnerships, and more. A former NFL 40 under 40 winner, Damani holds degrees from just Princeton and Indiana University. Damani Leach. Next, we have Greg Feasel, who is the president and COO of the Rockies. Greg's been with the Rockies for nearly 3 decades. He's now in his 3rd season as team president, where he manages all aspects of the Rockies organization, operations, I should say. And there's a reason why Greg looks like a football player. He's in Abilene Christian University Sports Hall of Fame, and even though he went undrafted in 1980, he still managed to play quite a bit of pro ball through much of the 80s. Greg's a seasoned leader with a background in sales and marketing at Coca-Cola Enterprises. He's an honored educator and a community advocate. Greg Feasel. And finally, we have Matt Hutchings, who is the EVP COO of Kroenke Sports and Entertainment. And Matt has been the EVP and COO of Kroenke since 2013 and has been with Kroenke Sports since 2003. He oversees Denver-based Kroenke Sports Entertainment businesses that support the Nuggets, the Avalanche, the Rapids, the Mammoth, and KSE venues like Ball Arena and Dick's Sporting Goods Park. Matt is also president and CEO of KSE Media Ventures, managing Altitude Sports and Entertainment, KSE radio stations, national TV networks, outdoor publications, and Skycam aerial cameras. You thought my resume was long. His is really long. Matt Hutchings, ladies and gentlemen. All right, do you guys have waters? Okay. All right, I'm going to grab a water for me real fast, and I will head over. Okay, so, gentlemen, this is fun. Opening question. It was funny. I was thinking about this more on the way in. You're talking to an audience of CEOs and C-suite execs, but everybody runs things a little bit different. A lot of these people might be Monday through Friday people, and you guys haven't known that life for a very long time. So I'm going to ask each of you. Matt, I'll start with you. What is it like? And, you know, there's non-game day days and there's game day days. You guys work a lot of nights and weekends. Do you still go in at the same time as it would be on a game day for a home game?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you, Susie, appreciate it. And thank you so much, Deb and Chris and Brian and Scott. Thank you guys for sponsoring. It's great to be here. You know, I was talking to a friend earlier, and what people don't realize sometimes is that we're a business, right? And so sports is a business, and while we do a lot of things on weekends and nights, you still have to run the business during the day, you know, from security to venue operations to F&B. So the short answer to your question is, I thought about this. This is my 42nd year in sports and entertainment, and if I had wanted my weekends, I really chose the wrong business, right? So. But it's, you know, we get in and luckily we have just a great group of people in our organization. You know, we come in, I try to make it a regular occurrence, and you get in and you do your job, and you know, our goal is, and I think I can say this for any of the C-suite leaders and managers, our job is to provide the tools and the resources for our people to do their jobs. And so I think from a regular cadence of coming into the office, we try to get into that, but you know, we make a game or two every now and then as well.
Okay, Greg, how about you? You've got 81 home games that are going on, and I know you're at a lot of those.
Yeah, and then you add, then we add the...
It's not.
No.
I started off life in production, so I know how to turn on mics.
You must have learned that at A&M. Yeah, the 162 is really the big number. Sports is not for everybody, and when people come into our organization, we spend a lot of time talking to them. I mean, it's glamorous and maybe not so glamorous when you lose 100 games, but people want to be there, but sometimes they don't understand the investment in the time. And when you have 162 and you're worried about broadcast, or you're traveling to do a best practice trip in another market or to an away game, the weeks become very long, and you need a very supportive family. I think the people who put a lot into it get a lot out of it, but it's not for everybody. Our days, if it's a night game, my day will start at 6 a.m. And then, like last night after the game, I got to bed about midnight. Thanks, Kenny Monfort, for letting me get 5 hours of sleep. And then to Matt's point, yeah, you got to run the business. But when we talk to the people we partner with in the community, they might have a 40-hour week, but they're owning it and they're living it 7 days. And that's pretty much what we do.
Damani?
Yeah, I think I have the benefit of the best schedule of the three up here. We only play one game a week.
Yeah, you got 17 regular seasons to worry about.
Yeah, so yeah, I think, but I think the same principles apply. We have a lot of great people who work many hours. They don't work a traditional 9 to 5. They work 6-7 days a week. On the business side, also on the football side. I mean, they grind. Sometimes we get back from a flight. A night game, we'll land at 2 in the morning, and half the people on that plane are going right into the building. So it is quite the haul of a season for a lot of our staff, whether you're the general manager or you're the 24-hour security supervisor at the stadium. There's a lot of people putting in hours.
Yeah, it is. For those that don't know, there's so much behind the scenes that goes on, and I know that when we do have a night game with the Broncos, we will land at 2 a.m. And granted, it's a charter. You can land and you can, get on the highway pretty easily, but then you got to turn around because it doesn't stop. And some of those PR guys will go in immediately, guys and gals, and start the release for the next week. And with you guys, it's daily, and you got to have another piece of information. Everybody wants information, so it's a nonstop clock, that's for sure. Okay, so when you think about your professional journey, guys, and your education, your career path, if somebody looked at you today, and you've already said it's not for everybody, but there are some people that they're built like this, and this is what they want to do, what would be your advice to a young person that would want to get into being a sports CEO, COO?
I didn't even want to be in this business when I went to school. I was studying to be a clinical psychologist, but I was broke, so I worked at a TV station for 4 years in college.
You picked the perfect profession.
I know. I don't have
we all
to.
need help.
I use it every day, actually. So, and then when I went to grad school, I worked for what was then Home Sports Entertainment. It was one of the original regional sports networks in the country, and then I got sent overseas, and I finally thought, that's kind of a fun business. I think I'll stay in it. So there you go. I've been here for a long time. I tell folks that, as we've all said, it's a business, and sometimes, as Greg said, when folks come in, they don't realize that, especially some of the younger kids, because it's glamorous, it's cool, but when they get there, we say, you got to remember, we're a business, and we have a P&L, and we have to operate as such. And so, but I tell folks, especially the young, I love talking to kids, college kids, you can put your mind, you can do anything, right? We know that. We see it every day in our country. You can do anything you want. Just got to remember, if you want that, you look around and there's a lot of people who want the same thing. And so you have to work harder. You have to come in earlier. You have to stay later. You have to work hard. Over the years, I've talked to a lot of kids, who want to be talent. And I'll sit in a room with 10 of them and I'll say, who here wants to be, on air? 8 of them will raise their hands. I said, okay, look around. You got to just, don't let anybody tell you can't do it. Just know you're going to have some competition. So, we love it. It's great. People, we're blessed to have people who want to work in our business, but those that are successful realize very fast it's a business, and you work hard, and you get to enjoy the wins, and sometimes the losses stink, but we'll move on and go to the next day.
And you should also ask who wants to work holidays and weekends.
Yeah, that's what we kind of keep that out. Right? Yeah, we tell them after they sign the dotted line.
Right, yeah, that's part of it. And Greg, your path with being with Coca-Cola early on and whatnot, your path to the Rockies was a little bit different. And I know you were very close with Kelly McGregor, and that was a big tie-in there for you with the Rockies.
Yeah, it was a great transition because I was able to work with the organization really since day one. I think my first meeting, and I'll age myself here, was in 1991, and there was 4 people in the office, but I was on the Coke side. And then I worked with them for a number of years, and then an opportunity opened up. Jumping on what Matt was talking about, you got to understand, like my Coca-Cola days, you know, you have great opportunity because there's huge numbers in the business. So you might have 200, 300,000, and if you're willing to move, there's great opportunity for growth. What's tough for young people is coming into organizations that have 350, 400 people, and we don't leave. You've been around forever. Now, they try to kick us out, but it don't always work. But it is tough. It's tough for young people because they get in and, they want to grow and they want to get promoted, but it's the law of small numbers.
Absolutely. Damani, what would be your advice?
Yeah, well, I did want to work in this business. Coming out of college, I wanted to work in sports. And, something that was told to me early on that I've carried and I share it with others, young people as well, is really 3 things. Like, you got to know your stuff, you got to work hard, and you just got to be a good person. And those 3 things generally will guide you to success. When you're young and you're early in your career, you're not going to get a lot. You're not going to get the full plate of work that the executives get, and you may want all that. You may get a little piece of it, but work really hard at it, know it really, really well, backwards and forwards, upwards and downwards. And then, we talked about the hours we all work. It's just, there's no room for just bad people. And I don't tolerate it. I know you guys don't tolerate it. This is a small business. Word gets around. And so work hard, know your stuff, but also just be a good person.
Yeah, for as big as sports is, and I think we see it all the time, especially it's very public with coaches, how small the fraternity is, but it's also like that on the inside of organizations. If you aren't the right person, it's going to get around that you're not the right person. You guys have a different business setup, as you've talked about, as far as just the hours go, but also the fact that there's the business side and then there's the player personnel side. There's a whole other facet to all of your organizations. So, Damani, I'll start with you this time. What are some of the misunderstood conceptions about the sports industry, and how difficult, or is it difficult, to know that you have your side, the business side? There's a whole other part of it that's what's on the field, what's on the court.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, and we got some folks here today, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is we're just this, cash raking in machine, and it just, we wake up every day, we open the door, and money comes flying in. And that is not the case by any stretch. We have a lot of folks who work really, really hard, not only to manage the expenses on the side of the business really, really well, but also to drive the revenues, and understanding that those revenues feed the organization, feed the football side, provide our coaches and trainers and staff with the resources to be successful.
And part of that salary cap, and that's something that's dealt with on another side, as far as, if different leagues are different with that, but you don't get to control that as a CEO or CEO.
No, definitely not. As I describe my role's everything outside the white line. So I don't pick the players, I don't call the plays. But I do, as we talked about, we try to drive the resources to put us in a position to be as successful as we can.
Greg, how about you? Misconceptions.
I think the biggest one is that everyone thinks it's a light switch, that you get this player and this is going to happen. You put in this scoreboard, this is going to happen. And the best analogy I could give you is with weather. They ask, okay, well, how do you make a decision when you postpone a game or when you cancel a game? We don't make the decision. Mother Nature makes the decision. But people want a light switch that you can just flip it and then everything turns around. And I know your businesses are the same way. That's not how things work. But when people think of sports, they think that it's different. Okay, even though my business, I can't flip a light switch and increase my revenue by 20%, the perception is that we can do it, and it just doesn't happen. There's no absolutes.
Great points, and Damani, you're right. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is, boy, sports, you make a lot of money. I think I can speak for Mr. Kroenke. If he was sitting here, no, that's not the case, right? you gotta, you know, and our biggest thing is, as the guys have said, you know, our fans are our customers. That's what we work for every single day. And how do we make the experience, when folks come and spend money to our venues, you know, they're coming to enjoy their time. And so I think, I know all of us look at this, that we have to figure out each and every time, not only the quality of the players on the field or the ice or the court, whatever it's going to be, that our ownerships are all driven to make sure that we have the best. And then secondly, how do we ensure that our customers, our fans, have the best experience? Because that's, you know, a lot of you are our customers. I think I can speak for all of us. We appreciate that. You know, whether you're a suite holder or a ticket holder, whatever it may be. But our folks, each and every day, that surrounding our business units, that's what we think about, all right? How do we make this the best experience? How do we maximize our opportunities? And then you know, thank God we have Joe Sakic, Calvin Booth, Josh and Stan Kroenke, you know, the guys that really are the smart ones making the decisions for our player personnel and ensuring that we have the best teams.
And that segues perfectly into my next question, because I know that to be the best, you also go around and look at other teams. I know, you know, we go on the road games with the Broncos, and Haley was out there that first preseason game looking to see what the Cardinals are doing at State Farm, which Brian had, that was talked about before. So what makes us different? We do have a very high bar, as Brian said. And do you go around and look at other ballparks, other facilities to see if we can make the fan experience? And it's very different this year at Empower Field than it has been in the past. And I know there's a huge effort behind that. And I think that's really important, because this is your customer. Greg, we haven't started with you, so we'll start with you. You've done a lot at Coors Field to make the fan experience, and they keep coming back.
Yeah, and the reason we do it is, and we call them best practice trips. I'm sure that's what you use, the term you use in your businesses. Yeah, you go see what other people are doing, and then you make it work for yourself. The example would be the rooftop. The rooftop is really, you know, 4 or 5 different parks that I could go down and tell you, you know, that we took a little bit from. And we took 3,400 seats that really were used 10 times a year and created a destination. And it's really, I mean, it's changed our business, but how that happened is we went out and we looked at other venues. And I know these guys do the same thing. I will say this is, you know, I don't know how many different markets I've been to, probably been to 7 different baseball stadiums, 3 different football stadiums just this year doing what we do. Customer service, we are so fortunate. I believe we do a good job, but I can tell you these guys do a great job. And when you go to other ballparks, other cities, it's not the same. And it does make a difference, so.
The same thing. So we have our executives within our management team. We travel constantly, you know, to go to look at other venues, to see what their best practices are, how they, you know, what are they doing to get their fan experience to the best that it can be. And so it's very important to us. And I think that we look at, for example, what used to be Pepsi Center, thanks Pepsi, now Ball Arena, obviously thanks Ball Corporation. Little plug there for our sponsors. You know, years ago, I think it was probably in 12 or 13, we said, we don't have a VIP experience. We don't have that club experience. And so we looked around the building and we thought, what can we do and where can we put it? And that's where Club Lexus was born. And it's been a huge success. And then with PointsBet, which is one of our sponsors, I know we're going to talk about gaming later, but with PointsBet, we looked at another opportunity to create another fan experience. So we have the PointsBet Lounge, which will open up this season. And that's going to be another wonderful experience. So I think we all look at who's doing what, how are they successful, and how can we replicate that or even be better.
That Lexus Lounge looks nice. I saw Derek Wolf went there and had a video on social media. That looked really nice. I'd like to go sometime. No,
we can get you in. I know
okay,
people.
You know people that know people?
We know people know people.
Damani, I brought up Haley. Haley Sullivan's the new, you guys brought her in. She was a non-sports entity with marketing. And that has shown just in the first couple of home games how different the fan experience is. So really talk about what you guys have focused on this year, especially with that new scoreboard availability.
Yeah, and I think it starts with a lot of what the other 2 gentlemen have said, which is I think we're all really competitive is what underscores a lot of that. Individually, we're competitive. We bring that to work every day. We want to be the best that we can be. We want to be the best in the league. I think one of the things that's unique about really probably our leagues all do them in one way or another that's different from other industries is although we're really competitive, the league facilitates a lot of information sharing and best practices and subtly tells you where you rank in certain things, whether that is, safety and security or attendance and ticket sales, but also, how your stadium is set up from a hospitality perspective, does a lot of really good information sharing. And then we all at clubs take that in and then decide what we're going to do with it. And the really competitive, ambitious clubs put things in place. And then to your point specifically, one of the areas that we noted coming out of last season was game presentation, which is, you get into the stadium, you sit into your seat, how are you being entertained, in between the whistle, right? Whistle to whistle, what is happening? How are you being entertained pregame, halftime, between the breaks, all of those things. And there are some clubs that do a really, really good job at it. And so you have to humble yourself a bit, in which we did. And we really stripped down our entire game presentation. We knew we had this new video board coming and used that as an opportunity to really rethink what we did. And Haley's been great. And I think having people on your team that come from outside of sports also brings a really unique perspective. She came up through the toy industry and just, asks great questions, challenges us, some of our folks who've been around for 20, 25 years. And I think we have a really good team because of that balance.
And I find that fascinating too, because I think people can be brought into businesses, no matter what business it is, from a different, completely different force and bring different ideas and bring other opportunities. How do you balance the needs of your stakeholders, of people that are involved with your organization? There's also players, there's owners, there's fans, there's all these different, headed monsters that you have to deal with consistently. So how do you kind of figure out how to please everybody? You can't please everybody, but you try and do your best to please everybody. I'll start with you, Matt.
Yeah, that it's like any business. As we keep going back to it, it's the business of sports, and so we have sponsorship, we have ticket sales. Our building thankfully stays very, very busy year round. Besides just having the 3 teams. By the way, I got to remind everybody, we had the Mammoth.
The Mammoth, yes.
The Mammoth won a championship the year we won the Stanley Cup. So yeah, let's not forget them. We almost did it again last year, but Buffalo, we played them again in Game 3. They were not going to let us walk out of that building with a win. So, but and that's a good point, because you have the teams coexist. It's an ecosystem that just in our building. We also own Dick's Sporting Goods Park, so you have the role of trying to ensure that as our stakeholders, our department heads, that we're working together. We're competitive internally. As teams, everybody's competitive. We love sports. I've played it, been in it my whole life. But we all, in our organization, we always look to what's the common goal. The common goal is to be a successful organization, to ensure that we do a proper return on our investment for our ownership, and primarily that we ensure that we take care of our fans in the best way possible. So it's, it's like any business in terms of, doesn't matter what you're doing, you have the different departments, they all have to work together in a common goal. And we talk about a lot that we can close the door behind it, get in an office, we can disagree. We can just talk, hash it out. But I always say when we walk out, we all have to be on the same page. We all have to be unified, and that the message that comes from our management down to all of our staff is unified, and it's a similar message.
I like that. Damani?
Yeah, I think it starts with ownership. We've got a great ownership group. The Walton Penner Family Ownership Group has been tremendous, and that starts with them setting a vision. And that vision for us is to be the best team in sports, all of sports, to cheer for, play for, and work for. And everything cascades down from that. And you have to continually communicate that vision. And so it really starts with that. A lot of times there will be differences in opinion on strategies on how best to achieve that vision. And the best solution is communication usually. And I think for me it goes back to my old football days where coaches say, look, I'm not going to treat everybody equally, but I'm going to treat them fairly. And I think if people feel like they're being treated fairly and they understand that whatever the decision is getting towards that common goal, generally they're going to get on board.
Greg, how about you? The fans keep coming to Coors Field, and you guys keep keep doing it right as far as that goes. And I know
sometimes
they are. I know. Sometimes we have too many of the opposing fans there, but that happens to anywhere you are.
Yeah, that's pretty much happening everywhere nowadays. But 100% agree with these guys. And in your businesses, you got to know who you are. And we have a mission statement. They have mission statements. I sit down with every new hire, and we call it Rockies on Deck. And the whole meeting is for them to get to know me, but for them to understand what our vision is and what our mission. Is it tough some days when the mission statement's over here and your win and loss record is over here? Yeah, it's tough. We were talking earlier before this started that if it was easy, they wouldn't need us. If we could go out and win every year, they wouldn't need these 3 people sitting up here. But I think it's really important that you're consistent. You let people know what your vision is, and then hopefully everybody gets on the bus. We finished that meeting and treat people how you want to be treated and be a good teammate. And I know in your businesses it's the same way. I mean, if you're not having everybody pull on the rope in the same direction, it's going to be a miserable day and a miserable week, a miserable month, and a miserable year end. And that's what you got to do. And really our jobs when we're not doing well is to make sure that people are focused on that and know that, yeah, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
You mentioned the sports betting earlier, so that'll be our next topic. A lot of advertisers are also sports bettors, sports betting companies. So what needs to be done? And we've seen so much change just over even the last few years, over the last decade, as far as sports betting. We now have teams in Las Vegas when we couldn't have teams there before. There's really been a little bit of letting go of that tightness of sports betting. However, there are still regulations. We see guys that get suspended because they've been doing betting and whatnot. So how do you see that affecting the industry and keeping, I don't know, is it walking a little fine line between here's your advertisers and getting that money, yet making sure you don't cross over into an area where you shouldn't be? I'm looking at you, Matt.
All right, I'll go. Right.
You were shaking your head.
I got my cue. So, I think it's what's really changed our business and our industries is the confluence of technology with how fans consume sports. I don't have my phones over there, but we all look at it. Everybody, the access to sports is immediate, and that confluence of that technology with sports and how consumers engage and consume is really, I think, what's driven the sports betting. Obviously, the laws that have lightened up and all the other things that go around in that. It's a game changer, and there's a lot of businesses that, because of the technology, we get a lot of data on the consumers, and that's what people want. Everybody wants to, have access to not only their current customer base, but the potential customer base. And so, and it changes daily. I mean, I know we'll probably talk about, television, right, and broadcast. That's changing, but that's all coming together. And the best word I can say is the confluence of bringing it all together. And how do we work with the companies that want to work with us, that really want to have the end game of getting connected to the consumers.
Greg?
I think it all starts with education, and I know all the leagues do the same thing. They do a ton with education, and I mean, you have to watch a Zoom, or you have a meeting that you have to sign in blood that you were there. It's just the way. And then it's controls, right? In all of our business lines, I mean, you got to have controls in place. Whether it's cash or your finances. I mean, you have controls in place, and it's. When you get down to the nitty gritty, I mean, that's what you have to do. And at the end, it's accountability. If somebody misplaces cash, then you make a decision, right? It wasn't your decision, it was their decision. And I think all the leagues have done a great job. It's out there and it's not going away.
It's definitely not. Damani, I mean, so here's a question then, as far as having an official betting partner of, 10 years ago, that would have been, people would have been like, are you kidding me? So to have sports betting that involved with the league, is that, I don't want to say weird, but it's just a very different landscape than it ever has been before.
Yeah, it's different. I'd say it's good. It's good as a fan engagement tool. I think it's incredible in terms of keeping fans engaged in our sport, whether they're in the stadium or they're on their couches. People want to engage in the sports in different ways, and it's a great tool for that. I think it brings what was under the table above the table. And so if I think from a, we talk about integrity, I think prior to pervasive legalized sports betting, people wondered. They often wondered out loud about the legitimacy of games, and history is sort of riddled with that. I think now there's so much more technology. I think these organizations do so much tracking who's betting when, betting on what. They're measuring the movement of the lines. I think it's really good for the integrity of the game as well, for it all now to be above board.
That has to be fascinating data. I mean,
very.
I'm sure. I can't even imagine. All right, the Colorado Business Roundtable employers work on a lot of public policy challenges, including tax and regulatory issues, infrastructure, and growing Colorado's workforce that can make it easier or harder for businesses to exceed. So I'm going to ask each of you, based on that, what are some of your biggest challenges? And Greg, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and I think this question is really, it's change, right? And how people deal with change, whether it's the Fair Pay Act and posting all the positions and all the salaries, that's been an impact. You can argue the positive side, you can argue the negative side. And then it's really, how do you adapt your business? I think what we see is people don't understand the chain reaction. So if you raise minimum wage, if you put those costs in the system, then a hot dog at one of our venues is going to be more expensive. It's just everything we do or everything that happens to us affects everything else that we do. And I would say that's the toughest thing in it is, it's change, then you got to adapt, and you got to move forward because we're not doing it.
Right, Damani?
Yeah, and I think, in terms of numbers of employees, we're relatively small organizations, compared to some of the others in the room, although we're incredibly visible. But the impact is important in making sure people understand that impact. I know as things come across our desk, we email each other, our general counsels email each other and share information of like, hey, do you know what this is going to mean for us? And are people aware who are maybe putting forth the bill? Are they aware of what this is going to mean for us? And so I think the communication of those implications is really important, not just for us, but I think for everybody who's involved.
Yeah, that's and Greg, I'm glad you mentioned that. I know that when policies are made, people have the best intentions, right? It's unfortunate theory as opposed to, practical application causes us a lot of issues. Our organization now, we have over 1,000 full-time people. We have about 4,000 contract people that, because of the events that we do. And then when we have a weekend where the Rockies are playing, the Broncos are playing, the Rapids will play, CEU's playing, CSU. I mean, all of a sudden it puts a huge drain on the labor force within our market, and it's a challenge. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I know that we face is just, we want the best staff because those are the people interfacing with your fans. Again, it's fan engagement, fan experience. But I think that when we look at like the fair pay situation, I know there was good intentions, but that causes a huge ripple effect within our organization and the younger staff because all of a sudden you have to post a salaried, position and what you're going to pay. And everybody who's in that realm looks and goes, well, wait a minute, I'm not getting that. It's like, well, yeah, but you only have 2 years experience, and the person who left had 12 years experience. So then all of a sudden you get into this constant conversation with your staff. And for the younger, I think for younger employees nowadays, I'm sure everybody is probably out there as deals, it's a challenge because, there's the immediate gratification. There's so much information that's out there available. And so they see what some people are doing, they go, that's what I should do. It's like, well, you got to kind of earn some of that, right? We've all been in this business a long time.
I have never thought about that, and you make a great point, Matt, in that we love that we have so many teams here. However, they do all play at the same time sometimes, and so that person that's sitting there getting angry because they can't get a beer because there's not enough people staffing the concession stand, but there happens to be 6 other things going on. So I think that's something good to for people to remember. When you can't get your beer, don't get angry at the staff, right? Okay. What is the most successful way that you drive engagement with your brand? Damani, we talked about this already with you and what you guys are doing. One of the cool things, and I know this is done over at Ball Arena too, that I saw at that first preseason game, is there's the technology now for people to make their cell phones a live camera. Because I looked up and I was like, how is that camera getting in the top, in the 5th level there? And it's because you have this ability. It's not cheap. I heard that. I heard it's very expensive. But people can engage that way. And then suddenly their phone is a camera and it's on the big screen and they're loving life.
Yeah, I think more broadly, I think it's just game day. Game day is the biggest physical manifestation of your brand if you're a team. We talked about earlier, and it's really the driveway to driveway experience and how people feel about that, how easy to get in and out of your building, how nice are the ticket takers when you come to the building, how warm, how warm's the hot dog, how cold's the beer, all of those things that are outside the lines that we can't control what's in it, but everything outside of it, your merchandise, we're investing more time and energy in merchandise because also from a brand standpoint, when the game is over, people are carrying that out of the stadium and they're wearing it in the community. What that merchandise looks like, feels like, says a lot about your brand as well.
Greg, how about you guys? There's a lot of giveaways every year with the Rockies. You do a lot of fan engagement with at the gate.
Yeah, I'll jump on Damani's wagon. From my Coke days, and this is probably the best example I can give you. So you spend, Coca-Cola company spends, hundreds of millions of dollars of advertising and commercials and glitzy stuff. And but if you put a Diet Coke in a cooler that's out of date and it doesn't taste good or it has syrup on top, it's probably not a good experience. I think most people think that, the brand message or the brand plan is one thing, and it's not. It's, from the driveway to our venues. And we spend a lot of time, how do we not break that chain? Because if someone has a bad experience in a restroom, then their whole day is shot. If they had a bad experience with the parking attendant, their whole day is shot. So all this time and energy that we've spent, working on our brand is trampled because of that experience. So we talk about, event staff, concessions, hot dogs, suite experience, and it's a lot to keep going. And I'm sure it's the same in your guys' business that, you drop one shoe, my size 17, you drop a size 17.
That's gonna hurt.
Yeah, it's probably gonna make a little noise, and it does. And if someone has a bad experience in a restroom, it's gonna make some noise, and they might not come back. And they might tell 21 people that they didn't have a good experience. So making sure that that chain is intact, it's a big lift for all of us.
Win, that's always a good way to engage with your fans. And when you're not winning, and we've all been there, we've all been winners, and we've all, it's cyclical, right? But I say that a little bit in jest, but it's true. So because it's when you're not going to have a winning season every year, and then you have to figure out how do you make that experience the best for those fans. And we don't ever hear about the the 98% of the people that come to our venues who had a great time. It was wonderful. We all know this in business. It's the vocal minority. It's the 2% that you're going to hear from. And a lot of times it's very valid. Like the guys have said, our folks, the ticket takers, are, to me, the most important people in our organization are those that are interfacing with our fans. Whether it's the front desk reception, to our security staff, to our concierge, the folks working the F&B, that is what makes a big difference to bring people back. We do a lot of fun stuff. We give the tchotchkes away, and we do all these events, and we want to make it fun. Again, folks are coming to have a good time and root for their teams, but it's a constant. How do you constantly look at engaging your fans, your customers, giving them the value for what they've spent with you, and making sure that when they go out, they spread the word that, hey, this is a lot of fun. Never knew I could have so much fun at an event. And like Greg said, when you sit down, I think we all do, and I know we do, we talk to the folks and say, you have to understand, you are the most important person in our organization because you can make a difference to our customers. And that's what I think, and what, going back to the very first question, sports is a business. We have customers that we need to take care of and make sure they have a good time.
Yeah, funny story. Greg brought up the bathroom. My daughter and I went to the Jonas Brothers concert a couple weeks ago at Ball Arena, and after they started first few songs, I'm like, I'm going to use this time to go to the restroom because the lines won't be long. So I walk into, it was labeled women's, and I walk in and there's 3 stalls and a whole bunch of urinals, and I'm like, did I just walk into the men's bathroom? And there's another lady in there, and she looks super confused. I walk back out, and I'm like, no, it says women's, and I realized they turned a bunch of the men's restrooms into women's. And then my daughter went to Taylor Swift. She said they did the same thing at Power Field, and I thought, well, that was cool. There are way more women here. And so to me, I had a great bathroom experience at Ball Arena, and she did it at Power Field for those shows. But those are the things, the little things you don't think about, that why it threw me off. But then I thought, well, that was genius of somebody to put more women's bathrooms in here because it's all women watching the Joe Bros show.
Nowadays, you're not sure, but that's great. But you know, that's knowing your customer base, right?
Exactly.
We knew who was going to be there, and we had to make it better for everybody.
I loved it. I loved it. Okay, so the fan experience, and we've talked a lot about this, it's changing. It changes at the venues. It also changes for people at home. So how do you kind of work with the people that are maybe watching the games and they only go to, you know, one Rockies game a year, one Nuggets game a year, they make it to one Broncos game, but they're watching all the time at home. So how do you pull those people in? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I knew that question was coming.
Yeah.
You know, again, just like we do in arena, you know, in our stadium at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, it's you want to make sure you have the best fan experience. You know, look, winning cures a lot of ills in our business. It does. You can have a horrible season and everybody's on you. And then, you know, we look back, I went and looked at some data from 15-16, 16-17, 17-18. The Avs were not good. They were not good. And all of a sudden, we win the Stanley Cup. You know, people forget the bad days. They love the good days. And so that's why we say winning cures a lot of ills. But for us, in terms of first and foremost, is translating what's happening in our buildings to the fans watching at home, you know, or to listening at home, and saying, God, I really want to be there, and describing and explaining what's happening. You know, it's a challenge, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. Certainly, we've been challenged for the past couple of years with our distribution, and so you know, you have to work even harder to find ways to reach those fans and to engage them and to want them to come to your building and be a part of it. But it's like everything else. You just got to constantly look at best practices, do the best job you can, get the best talent, and the best broadcast and productions, so that folks look and say, wow, that's pretty cool. I want to be there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Greg, we'll move to you. But speaking of just the people that are on TV, the people that are on radio, how involved are you? And obviously with the radio part of it, it's iHeart with the Broncos and the Rockies. But as far as trying to figure out how to kind of permeate that part of it so you can gather that fan and bring them into the stadiums.
Yeah, there has to be a meeting of the minds, and everybody has to win. So you have to figure out how everybody wins. If just Coors Field wins and our rights holders don't win, it's not going to be good. So, I mean, we spend a lot of time with each other, and I've got a great relationship with Brenda and David over at AT&T, and that situation's changing. But you just got to go into it that everyone needs to win, and you figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, for us, it starts with data. We've invested a lot in it. We'll be investing more in it, and knowing who are those fans. We know who comes through the gates. We all know every fan who comes through the gates, but also who are the fans who don't come through the gates? How do they engage with us, whether that's on social media, whether it's on broadcast or on radio, gathering as much data as we can about them, and then inviting them to other things. So for us, that's we had 2/3 of the people who came to training camp had never been to a Broncos regular season game this year. So that's an extension for us. So bringing in different people to other parts of our events is a way to connect with people, but then also getting out in the community. And so we do that with our cheerleaders, with our mascots, with our players, with our alums. All of that is really important, meeting people where they are. We can't meet them on their couch, but meeting them as close as we can to that, so that they are encouraged one day to get into the stadium.
I'm curious how you got that data. Is that because you guys did tickets for training camp? Okay,
yeah. So
interesting.
First year we did tickets. So when you have a ticket, now we know who has the ticket, and we know about you, where you live, how far you drove, whether or not you've been to games. You can survey people afterwards, and you ask them, did you like your experience? You know, was the hot dog hot? Was the beer cold? All of those things, and then we take that into heart. We probably too much, if you ask my staff. We look at data a little too much, but I think all of that's really important.
All right, I want to ask each of you if you have a memorable fan interaction, something that kind of made you realize, wow, what we do really does make a huge difference. And we see cool stories all the time. We see, fans that, a player has impacted, whether they've reached out or something like that. But there's got to be something that each of you can kind of think about where you thought, this is cool. All these nights and weekends and holidays are worth it. Greg?
I've been around so long. It's been really cool to talk to people that are coming to the ballpark that are 3 generations, and the fact that we know a lot of those people, and when they want to come to a fireworks show and they talk about the fireworks shows back in Mile High Stadium in '93 and '94, and then how they've kind of evolved at Coors Field. That's special to all of us. Couple things that stick out to me, and we all have, whether it's Children's Hospital or Make-A-Wish. I mean, we all have hundreds of stories of stuff that'll just rip your heart out. But simple thing, my office overlooks 20th and Blake, and every single day somebody's out there taking a picture with Coors Field in the background. And when I go out the front door, it seems like every single time somebody's looking through the fence just to see the grass. It's a pretty cool place to work if you've got people doing that. And then the last thing I would say is we do high school baseball, where high school baseball kids are able to come to Coors Field and play. So many times people have grabbed me, and they're 30 years old now, 35, and they said, one of my best experiences growing up was playing at Coors Field. So I think that's cool.
Love it. Damani?
Yeah, maybe 2 things. So one was related to me. I just got into Denver about a year ago, and press conference and announcement, and I just thought, okay, this is pretty routine, fine. The next day I was in King Soopers. I'm shopping, and I'm just wearing T-shirt and shorts, but I'm wearing a Broncos hat, and I'm just walking down, whatever, the produce aisle, and somebody walks by and they say, hey, welcome to Denver. And I thought, that's weird. And then I thought, okay, all right, people know who I am now. Okay, that's different. But also, for me, what it meant is that it's important, and that people care about this franchise. They're excited and hopeful about the future, but it was also a reminder that people care. And it matters when you're walking.
And they know where you live.
That too.
They know where you shop.
It's not great. So that was a healthy reminder. I'd say the other, which is a little more fun, which is special. My office looks out onto the practice field, and you see it during training camp. You see it on Saturdays during the season. You realize for our players and our coaches how much they're away from their families. And on Saturdays during the season is generally it's a lighter practice. It's a walkthrough. But that's an opportunity for, the spouses and partners and kids of the players and coaches to come to practice. And for a lot of them, that's the only day of the week they're seeing that coach or that player, because they're up so early and they're home so late that the kid's already gone to bed. And it's amazing. And they just want to like tackle their dad and play catch for 15 minutes. And they get to do it on the practice field, and it's fun to watch it.
Matt, how about you?
Yeah, that's great points. I think for me, it's probably 2, and as Greg said, we have so many wonderful relationships with our charity organization and so many great partners. Many of you are out here today that you get to do so much with the kids, and that's really what makes it all worthwhile. But there's really 2 things for me. One is partying with 750,000 people over the past 2 years. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, that we've, to have those parades is incredibly special. And to see the fans, they just love their team. They love all of our teams, and they're passionate. And, when we hear the anger, I think we kind of look at that and say, that's a good thing. When a fan stops caring, that's a bad thing. But when they're angry at you, that's okay, because they're passionate. They want you to win. But the other thing is, and it's just So Peter McNabb, who worked with us for many, many years, Peter passed away, oh gosh, a year or two ago. But I remember, we get calls all the time, right? And we'd get them on altitude. And I always try to call people back. But one time we got a call from a fan, and they were ripping on Peter McNabb. So I gave Peter the number, and Peter called. And he said, he called, and the guy answered, and he goes, hey, this is Peter McNabb. And the guy goes, it wasn't me, it was my wife. And he handed the phone to his wife. And as only Peter could do, 20 minutes later, of course, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say, I'm just so angry. He goes, no, I get it, so. But those are those fun fan engagements.
There was a fun one we had just a couple of weekends ago after one of the Bronco games, and Dave and Rick will take text messages on the text line while we're waiting for Coach and Russell to talk, and there was a guy that texted in about Russ, and so in the break, and I'm hearing this on my IFB, Dave calls the guy, and he's like, hey, it's Dave Logan, and then you can hear the guy go, oh my God, what? And he's like, what you said about Russ, he's like, I thought Russ played a whole lot better than we've seen him play, and the guy's like back and back and back, and I can hear it, and I'm like, did he just call that guy during our commercial break? So it is kind of funny, the anonymous keyboard warriors out there that'll get after stuff, and then if you have the opportunity to call them back, they tend to back down very quickly. All right, we have a couple more here for you guys. Short term, long term. Obviously, short term, everything's easier when you win, but you also have to have long term looking ahead to what's coming up. So how do you balance those two? And you guys, Matt and Greg, your short term is daily with your teams as far as games go. Damani, yours is weekly, but all these businesses are 24/7 all the time. There's never an off season for anybody. It might seem like there is, but there's not. Yeah, Damani, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really three phases, right? It's the immediate term. What do we have planned for this week? What are we trying to get accomplished? But it should cascade to what our annual goals are. And those are clear. We share them across the organization, have a massive staff town hall. Everybody hears it from all the leaders. This is what we're trying to get done this year. But then they also, you do that with the long term in mind. And obviously for us, it's been no secret. We've got to figure out what our stadium situation is going to be in the long term. And so we've done, big on data and research. And so we've done that research, and we'll continue to do that research. It's a be quick but don't hurry pace that we're on, trying to figure that out. But that's certainly something we're focused on.
Greg, how about you guys?
Yeah, I think we all spend a ton of time planning, and I think the thing that people lose sight of is you have to adapt. When COVID hit, plans look great, and you're going to do this at the ballpark, and you're going to create this new space, but then COVID hits, and then it all changes. So, I mean, you've got to be light on your feet. You put your plan, and you do everything you can to make your plan, but you also have to be ready to adapt. And that's what we tell our players too. I mean, how you survive in any of these sports is, I mean, these players have got to be able to adapt, but so do our staff, so do our leaders in our organization. They have to be able to adapt. And if you don't, then you're not going to win.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and in our business, there's the off season. There's no off seasons anymore, and if you're blessed enough to have winning seasons, you run it all the way out, and all of a sudden your off season is super short. When you have a tough season, you get right to work the next day, and that's just like I know on our business side, on the sports side, that's where the owners and the coaches and the GMs are sitting there going, okay, how do we tweak our team to get better? Even if you have a winning season, how do you come even better? And then for us on the business side is you're constantly looking, how are we going to get better? What do we need to do? What are the challenges that we had? And then for us in particular, our biggest challenge obviously has been our broadcast situation with altitude. And so we're constantly looking, how are we going to resolve that? And until we do, how do we ensure that we can get to our fans, engage our fans, and make it that everybody can watch and participate in our teams? But it's it doesn't matter if it's on the pitch, off the pitch. Everybody in the entire ecosystem is figuring out how do you get better, not only next year, but like a lot of coaches and general managers, they're looking 2 or 3 years if you're going to develop players. When we went through our tough years, we had young teams, but you got to rebuild. That's what the Nuggets did. You're going to have to take a little pain for a year or two, but you're going to put that together, you're going to develop them, and we do the same thing on the business side.
Since you brought up the TV part of this, Matt, can you give a bird's eye view to everybody of what's going on and maybe kind of what the trajectory looks like for that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I used the term for the last couple years. We were kind of the canary in the coal mine. Our CFO looked at me when I said that one time. He goes, "Yeah, but sometimes a canary dies." And I go, "Well, that's a problem. We're not going to do that." But, you know, I say that because you look now, what's happening, and certainly we're in the business, you know, it's a huge challenge, what's happening across the United States, you know, Greg and with AT&T. And what it boils down to is the economics. And, you know, we've looked at this over the years and you know, we understand that the industry is changing. We're trying to adapt to the changes in the industry. You know, we're trying to work with, certainly we've got some great partners with DirecTV and Charter and others that have stayed with us. And, you know, we understand where Comcast is coming from. Look, they've got a business to run. When you see in our business, and I don't think any of us ever thought this, when you see what happened with Disney and ESPN and Charter said, "Nope, we're cutting you off." That was huge in our industry because ESPN's the 800-pound gorilla. That should tell everybody that things are changing and they're going to continue to change. I know that, you know, our friends at Comcast, look, they'd prefer to have the games. We know that, and we know that they want to service the market. We just all have to figure out how are we going to do that? How are we going to find the right economics? And, you know, for all of us, how are we going to continue to be able to broadcast the games to our fans and get the widest reach possible?
Thank you. That was perfect. We have time for one more quick one, I think, Debbie. Can I do one last closing for everybody? Okay, so what can Colorado sports fans be most excited about for the year ahead? Matt, you've got 2 seasons that are just about to start here, so you want to give your answer to that one with the Avs and the Nuggets?
NBA championship, Stanley Cup championship.
Okay, sweet.
And
a
Mammoth.
parades?
Yeah, 3 more parades. Huh?
3 more parades. All right.
No, yeah, we're excited. Obviously, you know, we've got great ownership, as my friends here do. We all have great owners in our organizations. We have great coaches. We have great general managers. We have great players. We have great staff. And I think that, you know, being in sports, and I know you've been around a long time, played it. It's, you know, we're just going to try to do our best and come out on the, as Pierre Lacroix used to say, just win the last game. Whatever that is, win the last game. And that's, you know, he was pretty successful at that. Yeah. So that's our goal, win the last game.
He was. Greg, we know where you guys are right now. What's our progress as we go forward for this next year for the Rockies?
We will manage the change and we will adapt. How's that?
I love it.
To use a business term. I would tell you, you know, you can do all the planning, you can put all the things in place, but then, you know, how are you going to deal with the change? And then how are you going to adapt? Injuries, we were devastated this year with injuries in our pitching, but it gave us an opportunity to look at our young players. And because I go around and I talk to my counterparts, our 2 young players that are playing left and center field, everybody's talking about them. Our shortstop, if it wasn't for that gentleman in Arizona, would be probably Rookie of the Year. We got a Gold Glove at third base and a Gold Glove at second base. So, and we feel good about our future. And I would tell you that we have hope, so hopefully you'll have hope.
Damani?
It's a good one. Look at that. Look at that. Look at you. Running for office here. Well, 2 things. So, our Chief Commercial Officer, Dennis Moore, and I were having this conversation yesterday. Winning is good for business, but winning is not your business plan. And we have to remember that. And so that's why we spend so much time on the fan experience and the game day experience. And so we hope everybody comes out to one of our home games and sees this gigantic video board that's the tallest in North America. We put in, you know, I think 25% growth of our team store. We added a new Breckenridge Bourbon Club that has a membership to that's full. 300 people joined that right away. You know, enhanced a lot of our food and beverage concessions, tried to automate that. So just like your experience in the restroom, we're trying to do that in the concessions. how much can we automate to speed that up, also given some of the labor challenges we have, try to get people back in their seats and watching the games. And so all of those things we're going to continue to do. So this was a massive effort over the course of the last season. People come out and experience this season, but it won't be the last thing we do. We'll continue to try and improve.
All right. Well, I know we always have hope. As a native, I always have hope for all the teams. So we're very excited for what's coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, what great conversation we had today with all of these CEOs. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll just do a couple quick remarks. Thanks, gentlemen, so much. I think we're all optimistic. I heard we're all competitors. I think that is true. Colorado is rooting for all of our sports teams to have a great couple seasons. Before we wrap up, I wanted to introduce two friends of mine that have added to my fan experience, a couple players. It's funny, while I say sports is my midlife crisis, I really don't know anybody's stats. I don't know how they're doing, but I know what charities they give to. I know what they're doing in the community, and I really like good people. So I'd love to just give a shout out to Derek Wolf, who's here today, and Todd Davis. And Todd, there you are, great. Two friends that I've made over the years that have been a lot of fun, help me understand football a little bit more. Last, I just want to say business is a force for good, and we appreciate the fact that these are excellent examples right here of businesses right here in Colorado. They just happen to be sports businesses, but they give so much to our economy and to our quality of life. So just want to thank these guys again. It matters to all of us to have good sports business here. We get the quality of life that it brings and all the fun. So how many of you will be at a game this next couple months? I'll see you at the game. But one more round of applause for these guys and to Susie. Thank you.